What's up, idols? It's CC Lesson 3. Welcome back to my channel and thank you so much for clicking on this video. I'll be honest, this video is not going to be for everyone. I understand that in the world we live in today, a lot of people look for entertainment and content that helps them escape. It's more lighthearted, it's less serious. For that type of content, I suggest you watch the story time I just uploaded on Saturday. It's a lot more funny, a lot less serious, and way more entertaining than this video will be. This video is for my intellectuals and my empaths who want to have a real serious discussion about what's happening in the world right now. Not people who want to deflect blame or attack each other. This is about people who actually want to talk about what's happening with intent. People who want to listen, not just to respond, but people who want to listen to understand. Disclaimer, right? I kind of have to do that because otherwise people will put words in my mouth. I love everyone. I am someone who values everyone. As long as you're not a person who spends their life and their time causing harm to other people with your words or your actions unapologetically and without remorse. But there are a lot of people who will spit in your face and expect you to be kind in return. I wasn't gonna talk about this. I was determined to not talk about this, but when I saw that it's starting to have ripple effects in Korea as well, and given what we talk about on my channel, Korea is the niche, I was like, shit, I think we gotta talk about this. Last chance to click off again, this video may not be for you. Anyway, let me just start. I'm gonna build into my point. I hope you guys will understand what I'm trying to say. I lived in Korea for over 2 years as an English teacher, and I make frequent visits to South Korea. While spending time in South Korea, I have noticed something, and this is not to generalize. I noticed in Korea there are a lot, not all, but a lot of Koreans who desire near proximity to white people and whiteness in the Western world. This is not me judging, this is me observing and having my own opinion. And it's not just about the fact that being really pale is like a beauty trend. Because I know being pale is also like a wealth status. You know, it's like, hey, look at how pale I am. I don't have to work outside as a laborer in the hot sun. And it's not even just about Koreans getting surgery to look less Asian and look more European. All the pale injections, all the pale creams and the pale beauty products, I'm not even talking about that. I'm also talking about how the Western world is romanticized in South Korea. People dream to vacation in Europe, and that's not just a Korean thing. Europe is lovely. A lot of people like to come to Europe. I think outside of somewhere like Japan, for example, because I notice a lot of Korean people love to go to Japan, they usually try to travel outside of Asia altogether. If you can say you studied abroad or you lived abroad in the Western world, if you have relatives who study or live abroad, that's like something to brag about. That's like a status thing. Luxury European brands. Look how many K-pop idols are brand ambassadors for Gucci, Louis Vuitton, Prada, Celine, Dolce & Gabbana, Fendi, Dior, just to name a few. Even things like the phone, right? Samsung is a global powerhouse. I love having Samsung phones. Samsung phones are dope. But did you know in South Korea, the most common phone brand, the most desired phone brand is actually the iPhone from America? It's seen as like a status thing. If you're Korean and you have an iPhone, whoa. Even when Korean people have Western friends and foreign friends and they date foreign people, it's like a status thing, something to brag about. Or even Koreans who only date foreigners, just like the story time I upload on Saturday. Again, if you want something a little more lighthearted, I recommend that video over this one. Enter white supremacist Charlie Kirk. So this part is gonna be long. If you agree that he's a white supremacist and you don't need to be enlightened, you don't need to see examples or explanations or anything like that, or you don't want to understand why so many people interpret him and his words and his actions that way, if you want to get right back into the whole point I was making about Korea, click to this time, skip this whole chapter, this part isn't really for you. But if you need convincing, or if you want to try to understand why so many people interpret him as a racist, a bigot, a sexist, a misogynist, a homophobic, all that stuff, then maybe this part of the video will be interesting to you. I can't get into the whole point I'm trying to make about Korea without addressing him specifically. And again, I'll say, do your best to listen, to understand, and not only listen, to respond. I heard this the other day and it's in my head rent-free. That's such a brilliant point, because you do have a lot of people who will listen only so they can have something clever to say, not listen to actually try to understand where you're coming from and why you feel the way you feel. I'm gonna take away me. I don't want any sort of visual distraction. I want you to just listen to the words, just focus on what's being said. Do not focus on what you're looking at. So before you guys rush to tell me that he wasn't a white supremacist, he only had different political views, and he just fought for free speech. My first instinct is to tell you, just Google it. If you don't believe we feel the way we feel, if you don't believe why we call him a racist, then just Google Charlie Kirk racist. It's easy and it's free. He had a podcast now hosted by Vice President JD Vance. He made his career online, getting clips and arguing with teenagers over his violent, racist, bigoted, homophobic, political views. But I'll humor you, so here you go. Here are some examples.
So you're comparing abortion to the Holocaust?
Absolutely I am. In fact, it's worse. It's worse. Were these blacks trying to go rob her? Happening all the time in urban America. Prowling blacks go around for fun to go target white people. That's a fact. Black crime is a major issue in our country. Why are you pushing criminal justice reform exactly? Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson, they're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously. Now, the southern border is, of course, the great replacement. They're trying to replace us demographically. They're trying to make the country less white. It is an anti-white agenda. If I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. Taylor Swift is now engaged to Travis Kelce. This is something that I hope will make Taylor Swift more conservative. Reject feminism. Submit to your husband, Taylor. You're not in charge.
America was at its peak when we halted immigration for 40 years and we dropped our foreign-born percentage to its lowest level ever.
Miss Rachel, you quote Leviticus 19, love your neighbor as yourself. The chapter before affirms God's perfect law when it comes to sexual matters. In Leviticus 18 is that thou shalt lay with another man shall be stoned to death. Can we get that picture up, Ryan, of that Marvel's Avenger team? Now, I don't know who the person is on the left. Is the person on the left that came and did the interview with Joe? The TikTok, your government is being run by freaks. It's like immediately I have like a flashback to a country where weren't able to do Bud Light commercials. What does being trans even mean? Is that even a real thing? It means you need therapy. We must ban trans-affirming care the entire country. I do think that there is a direct correlation between someone's testosterone and their politics. On young men, the lower their testosterone, the more likely they are to be Democratic.
So if you had a daughter and she was 10 and she got raped and she was going to give birth and she would, and she was going to give birth and she was going to live, would you want her to go through that and carry her baby?
That's awfully graphic.
But it's a real life scenario that happens to many people.
The answer is yes, the baby would be delivered. When blacks in America did not have the same rights they had today, they were less murderous, there was less break-ins. Why is that?
So I'm sorry, are you trying to say that blacks thrive under subjugation?
No, I'm not. I'm asking you the question. The data shows they were actually better in the 1940s. It was bad, it was evil, but what happened? Something changed.
And before you say this was all taken out of context, I encourage you to go online and look for the full clips. The reason I can't show you the full clips is because this video will be like 5 hours long if I do. The gist is still the same. I don't know what context will make it okay to say trans people are an abomination under God, or when I see a black pilot, I think, boy, I hope he's qualified, or women, submit to your man, you're not in charge here. When you think black people are less human than you and less intelligent than you and have less value than you, that is not a political opinion. He mocked George Floyd's murder and he justified it, calling him a scumbag even after his death because he had a criminal record and had a past with drugs. George Floyd was also a father. His murder was also captured on video. I thought no man deserved that, yet Charlie mocked his murder. Politicians on the right constantly mock tragedy when it's not one of their own. They made social trends and challenges like Trayvon Martining. I don't know if y'all remember that, but he was a 17-year-old who was shot and killed, unarmed. And people celebrated George Zimmerman for what he did. When Nancy Pelosi's husband was almost killed and beat to death with a hammer by a Republican, Don Jr. tweeted out, "Got my costume ready," and it was an underwear and a hammer. When Melissa Hortman and her husband were assassinated this June by a Republican who had a long list of Democrat targets, who also shot 2 other people, there was no moment of silence for them on the House floor. No flags were lowered to half-mast. No calls for change or unity. When Biden was diagnosed with cancer, they tweeted their celebrations and their jokes. So when Kirk died, even Democratic politicians called for gun control and condemned political violence of any kind. But when Kirk died, Republicans called for war and revenge on the left. These two parties are not the same. Do you get what I'm saying here? For some reason, Republicans are allowed to mock and ignore political violence or racial violence if it happens to a Democrat or someone who's not one of their own. But we must all stop and mourn the murder of a white supremacist And if we don't, then we're monsters. You want people to mourn and sympathize with someone who didn't see us as equal humans. He only advocated for straight white Christian men to have value. He stoked fear, and his rhetoric led to an increase in hate crimes and misogyny. Google it, dude. All you have to do is Google it. Do your own research and think for yourself. People defend him and don't actually know what he said. I had a few DMs after I posted a compilation of things that he said, where they said, oh crap, I didn't know he actually said that. I guess they assumed because he was a young, white Christian man, he must have been innocent. I noticed how certain demographics get the benefit of the doubt while others get demonized no matter what. It took one 9/11 to demonize all Muslims and assume they're all scary terrorists. But how many mass shootings happen every week, nearly every day in the US, and these shooters are young, white, straight men almost every single time, but there's no fear for them. There's no hatred for them. There's no demonization for them. And this is a good thing. I don't think that the craziest and the most violent people of any group should define the whole group. That's not fair. More people have died from guns in this country than have been killed by Muslim extremists. When a black person is wrongfully killed, people like Charlie Kirk justified it. They dig and they find the sins of their past. But when a white person is wrongfully killed, we don't speak ill of the dead. It's thoughts and prayers, and we humanize them. Before we even knew who Pew Pew Charlie, Nancy Mace was very quick to blame the Dems, and she said the Dems own this. But Republicans don't own what happened to Melissa Hortman. Republicans don't own the attempted assassination of Trump. He was a registered Republican. Again, a very simple Google search will show you everything you need to know. A Google search will also show you which political party in the US is responsible for the overwhelming majority of political violence and domestic terrorism in the United States. Spoiler alert, it's Republicans. They will continue to lie because they trust their base to not do simple research and think for themselves. One of the signs you're in a cult, you don't question the leader. You don't trust any information from anywhere else. Conservatives demonize education for a reason. Tyler went to uni for one semester, Tyler Robinson, the guy who Pew Pew Charlie, and they're like, see, education, university made him a serial killer, liberal. But guess what? There's a reason they're not talking about the Colorado shooting that happened moments after Charlie was shot. That school shooter was a 16-year-old white boy named Desmond. His online history made it clear that he was a neo-Nazi, a white supremacist, obsessed with mass shootings, and he frequented websites called watchpeopledie.org, and he was also a massive gun lover. This is the typical profile of a domestic terrorist in the United States, the typical mass shooter. But they're busy trying to make Charlie's killer a liberal. How is it that Republicans call liberals weak and snowflakes, but also we're violent and deadly? Liberals want affordable health care. We want acceptance for everyone regardless of their race, religion, or sexual orientation. We want schools to be affordable. We don't want kids to go to school hungry. We want people to feel safe. We want reasonable gun control. And a lot of conservatives appreciate socialism a lot more than they realize. When a right-winger is deplatformed or loses his job because of his words or his actions, they're the first to set up a damn GoFundMe asking for help from y'all. That's socialism, dog. Do you remember that guy who was a proud Trump supporter? He admitted to struggling financially because of the new tariffs. He set up a GoFundMe. There's nothing wrong with helping out people every now and then. Anyway, even if Tyler Robinson is a liberal, the majority of these incidents are done by right-wingers. He grew up with Republican parents, around religion, around white people, and was given his first gun when he was 12 years old. How did historically black colleges and universities get blamed for this? Why have they started to receive threats from the right? Right-wing hypocrisy knows no bounds. I really hope this helps you understand why people of color, the LGBTQ community, and even some women don't mourn his loss. Because mourning his loss is like bowing down to white supremacy. As they try to retcon and reboot his legacy to make him a martyr, he was a gun-defending white supremacist. Can you imagine asking a slave to mourn the death of their slave owner? Not saying Charlie was a slave owner, but the analogy holds. Even with his final words, he was talking with his student. The student said, "Do you know how many mass shooters were trans Americans over the last 10 years? Kirk said, "Too many." The student said 5. "Do you know how many mass shootings there have been in America over the last 10 years? Kirk said, "Counting or not counting gang violence." And then, ironically, he was shot by a young white man. He spent his last moments blaming trans and black people for gun violence, only to be shot by a young white man. And when we talk about race by crime, I cannot get into it all because again, this video will be like 5 hours long, but I will link an article below and I encourage you to read it. I encourage you to educate yourself. I encourage you to do your own research. I doubt you will, but it's there if you want to take a look. The topic of do black people commit the most crime is incredibly debatable, it's incredibly complicated and incredibly nuanced. But I know that is their favorite talking point on the right. Charlie said so himself that we commit the most crime and we were better off as slaves living under Jim Crow as a result. Black people are over-policed and sentenced to prison while white Americans often get probation or parole. Do you want to know one stat that is the highest among black men though? Exonerations. This means black people are the most likely to be sentenced to prison for a crime they did not commit. Whether they can't afford a good lawyer, whether they were forced to plead guilty as a result, or whether they have a racist jury, a biased judge, you name it. Whenever a person of color commits a crime, it confirms your racist bias and it becomes about race, not the crime anymore. Like what happened with that black guy who killed the white Ukrainian woman recently. The narrative becomes, look at how dangerous black people are. But when a white person commits a crime, they're a lone wolf, they're one crazy guy. Their actions don't define all white people and no one brings up race. We heard so from the Utah governor ourselves. They were hoping Charlie's killer was an immigrant or a trans person or a person of color. Here's what he said.
You know, this bad stuff happens. For 33 hours, I was praying that if this had to happen here, that it wouldn't be one of us. That somebody drove from another state, somebody came from another country. Sadly, that prayer was not answered the way I hoped for. Just because I thought it would make it easier on us if we could just say, hey, we don't do that here. And indeed, Utah is a special place. We lead the nation in charitable giving. We lead the nation in service every year. But it did happen here.
The double standards and the hypocrisy is literally crazy. I feel like it should be simple where one person's actions does not define their whole group of people. Yet somehow when one black person commits a crime, we're all criminals. Yet if one white person commits a crime, he's just one crazy person. Republicans also claim to be the party of free speech and the champions of it. But now they're actively trying to get people fired who don't mourn Charlie's death. It's only freedom of speech if they agree with your speech. They hate cancel culture, but they'll cancel you if you disagree with them. And they're also so quick to threaten you. Why are these double standards ignored constantly? Republicans and white supremacists continue to ignore the danger we face from radical, hateful right-wingers. Rich people have hijacked the Republican Party and control them with fear and hate. And for a man who seemed to be so devastated by Charlie's sudden loss, this was him when they finally found out who the shooter was.
Condolences to you, sir. My condolences on the loss of your friend Charlie Kirk. May I ask, sir, personally, how are you holding up over the last day and a half, sir?
I think very good. And by the way, right there, you see all the trucks? They've just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House.
It seems like Trump's over it, so I guess it's time for his base to get over it too, like they do with every other tragedy that revolves around guns. Not mourning his loss and not caring that he's gone is not the same as celebrating. One thing we did celebrate was that the shooter wasn't black, brown, or a woman, because we all knew for a fact that you would attack us all and blame us all if he was. I just wonder, why is it fair to say most blacks commit crimes, but not most right-wingers commit acts of terrorism and political violence? Most mass shooters are white, but why don't we say that most white people are shooters? The math does not math. They get to be individuals, but we don't. Anyway, I really hope this helps you understand why there are many people of color, many people from marginalized groups who don't see his passing as a sad tragedy. They're indifferent to it. They're not celebrating. They just don't care and they're not mourning over it. There's so much more that could be said, but again, I don't want this video to be hours long. So we're back. If you watched, I hope you found that helpful. It's just how I've been feeling. Where does Korea come into all this? On September 5th and 6th, Charlie Kirk was in South Korea, literally days before he was killed. He went to Korea to speak to some conservatives there. Funny enough, while he was on this trip, it was one day after that ginormous Hyundai raid in Georgia where 475 Koreans were detained. And with the time zone difference, it might have been like at the same time. The reason this was such a PR nightmare is because it came not long after Trump sat with South Korea's president, Lee Jae-myung, and they came to this agreement that South Korea was gonna invest in the US economy. So then you go to a South Korean plant and you do an ICE raid and you detain 475 Korean workers. So it's like, how do you want them to come here and work, but then when they come here and work, you want to get rid of them? Mind you, these people had work permits. Some of them were just there on a business trip and they got detained for it. I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I haven't yet seen an ICE raid that targeted paler immigrants, if you know what I mean. So of course, as a result, the felon had to go on damage control. He's like, no, guys, I want all foreigners to feel safe investing their money in our economy and helping to bring manufacturing jobs back to the US. No, you guys will be safe if you come here. This was just one hiccup, one mistake. Don't let our indiscriminate raids trick you and fool you and make you feel unsafe here. What's crazy is South Korea is a strong ally of the United States. And what I keep thinking about is how in the world is the United States gonna be able to host the World Cup next year? I believe it's Canada, the US, and Mexico set to jointly host the World Cup. Do you know how many foreigners are gonna wanna come to the US to watch the World Cup? The World Cup is ginormous outside of the US. But I'd imagine they'd be pretty scared to show up because they might be detained and questioned for hours and miss the whole thing, or not even allowed entry. So we've seen how foreigners, immigrants, non-YT people are treated on American soil these days. So yeah, while all this was going on, I saw a video of CK, I'm just calling him CK, nobody got time to say his full name. He was walking in a park in South Korea and he's like, wow, look at how clean it is here. Look how safe I feel here. The one dangerous thing I saw was a black cat. There's no graffiti, there's no beggars, no homeless people. Crime is a choice. Like, this was his whole thing. He basically went to South Korea to shit on the United States. Couple things. One of the reasons South Korea is so safe is because they have very strict gun control. And I know later he said, the liberals will love this. I'm not saying this because they have no guns. That is a big part of it though. The United States is one of the only developed countries that has such a gun crisis. And we're also one of the only developed countries that does not have gun control. Correlation. He was someone who strongly advocated against gun control. He said it. He said that it is worth having annual gun deaths if it means keeping the Second Amendment. He died for his cause. And then he also said that South Korea doesn't have homeless people. Yes, they do. Maybe he thought they were really religious because in South Korea, when you see a homeless person, typically they'll have like a cup or a box in front of them, like a small little box, and they're bent down on their knees, bowed over all the way with their head down, like a very deep, respectful bow, and their hands are in front of them like they're praying, hoping you give them some money. I've given money to them before. And also, have you guys ever been around Seoul Station past a certain hour? Because there are homeless tents everywhere. That is like the biggest homeless encampment in Seoul. That's where all the homeless people tend to go. But if they're not camping out on the streets or sleeping in subways, South Korean government also sets up shelters for people. They give them food, they give them housing, they let them take showers. Granted, it is not forever, it's for a limited time. And also you're required to like not drink while you're there, that makes sense. Contrast that to the United States where Brian Kilmeade from Fox News said this.
Billions of dollars to mental health and the homeless population. A lot of them don't want to take the programs. A lot of them don't want to get the help that is necessary. You can't give them a choice. Either you take the resources that we're going to give you or you decide that you're going to be locked up in jail. That's the way it has to be now.
Or involuntary lethal injection or something. Just kill them.
Yeah, Brian, why did it have to get to this point?
Right. I would say this. We're not voting for the right people. In North Carolina, wake up.
They were talking about what happened in North Carolina with that Ukrainian girl and the black guy who killed her. And basically they're trying to say that, oh, people having mental health crises and homelessness should just be ended. By the way, it is totally worth noting that MAGA, Republicans, right-wingers consider themselves to be Christian. They have all this hate for so many different people, but they're Christian. He also says South Korea doesn't have graffiti. Yes, it does.
All right, channel members, we are just walking through Itaewon. It is Thursday, so it's notably less people out. And I'm just gonna probably record until my memory card and or my battery dies. So enjoy.
You can Google Seoul graffiti and you will see it. It's pretty cool looking. And a lot of it is typically political. Looking at you, Banksy. He just lies, dude. It's just funny to me how someone who's rich, like CK was, can go around and demonize homeless people when, let's be real, so many of us are one emergency from homelessness ourselves. Whether you get sick and you can't work, therefore you lose your health care as a result, whether your rent goes up one more time, you can't afford the new increase, you could be let go from work because layoffs happen, and then you're like, it could get any of us at any time. So whenever I see rich people demonize homeless people, and often in the United States, a lot of homeless people are veterans, dude. Like, can you imagine saying this stuff about people and then calling yourself Christian? Anyway, CK also said this while in South Korea about the United States. They have a high trust society is what they have. I am here at Seoul, South Korea, and as you guys can see, everyone has those inflatable cushy chairs, everyone is reading, and this will last for about 35 seconds in most American cities. You can have nice stuff here, and crime is a choice you shouldn't put up with. It is also worth noting that when you look up, we have 50 states, right? If you look up like the 10 most crime-ridden states, 9 out of 10 of them are Republican states, they're red states. He says cities, trying to be cheeky about it because most cities in the United States, most major cities in the United States are blue. They're Democratic. That's where people mingle. That's where people's lived experience teaches them not to hate each other for no reason. And what's funny is we talk a lot on my channel about crime in South Korea, specifically crimes against women, and CK is like, see, look, there's no crime here. Crime is perfectly a choice. But also, like I said, we talk a lot about SA in South Korea and how it is very, very lightly punished. And this is what CK said about consent. This is just a clip, but again, I encourage you to Google the full video. The full clip is out there. See for yourself.
Like a fraternity guy and a sorority girl at age 19 hooking up, both 5 drinks in at 2 a.m. and all of a sudden she like removes consent. Yeah, like that's a murky middle gray area. And excuse me, I say.
She still removed consent, did she not?
Okay, but again,
if he continues to go onward with that encounter,
again,
then he is sexually assaulting her.
But that's just one example of how he says that when most women are assaulted, he doesn't believe it's actual assault. So anyway, CK was there to spread more of his Christian white supremacy and warn Korea and Japan that immigrants will ruin their country just like they ruined the United States. Which again, the irony, the hypocrisy, the double standards, because after COVID hit the world, we saw a huge spike in Asian hate crimes in the United States. This came after Trump and the Republicans blamed China for COVID. This led his followers and his disciples and his cult members to attack any Asian person they saw and blame them, telling them to go back where they came from, go back to China, even if they were Thai. And it wasn't helped by the fact that the felon called it the China virus. It got so bad that BTS had to go to the White House in 2022 to call for an end to Asian hate crimes. So this is the guy to go to Korea to warn them about immigrants, even though he represents this administration that treats Koreans like scum when they are in the United States. They're raided at Hyundai plants. They're rounded up and assaulted and accused of causing COVID. You can imagine my shock when I saw that Koreans were in the streets of Seoul protesting anti-China stuff, and they were holding up signs that said, "We are Charlie," and holding his picture, praising him as a martyr. Basically, Korea's government recently made a decision to let Chinese people come without visas. Chinese citizens no longer need a visa for South Korea. Instead, starting in late September of 2025, South Korea will implement a temporary visa-free entry policy for Chinese group tours, allowing for them to stay for up to 15 days. This policy is for a limited duration only, ending in June of next year, and it applies to groups organized by government-designated travel agencies. So basically, globally, what we're seeing here is CK has become a martyr, a symbol for people who don't want immigrants in their country. For everyone who thinks immigrants are bad and immigrants are destroying their country, CK is their symbol and their martyr. Just Saturday, here in the UK, there was a racist rally, march, whatever you want to call it, organized by a guy named Tommy Robinson, not related to Tyler Robinson, the guy who just Pew Pew Charlie, but he's more extreme than even Farage, who was like the leader of the Reform Party. It's like the equivalent of their MAGA, basically. Brexit kind of showed that a lot of people here don't want immigrants anymore. You know, they say immigrants cause crime and they bring danger and no one's safe and kids aren't safe and they're taking all the jobs and all this stuff. But you know what's funny? If you Google Tommy Robinson, you will see that he himself normal white English dude, has a long criminal history. Drugs and assault. He's been to prison. I saw this video before I filmed and it spoke to me.
To all the people protesting at migrant hotels, these are the people who've been jailed this week for crimes against children. Oh wait, no it's not, one sec. This is page 1, that was page 2, and these are the people who've been jailed since Monday. So now it's Thursday, so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Do they all have something in common? Because I can't quite figure it out. Somebody told me that all these people have something in common, but I can't think what it is. I've got some more pictures for you in a second, but to the people who've only got the energy for this at the hotels, you are living in an echo chamber, a social media echo chamber where you're only being fed information, where you think that most of these crimes that are being committed by these men are coming from one particular group. Because how many of these cases did you hear about? How many of these faces do you recognize? You don't, because you are living in an echo chamber. These are the people jailed this week for violence against women. Oh wait, no it's not one. I did it again, that was just page 2. This is page 1 of all the people who've been jailed this week for violence against women, all the way from stalking all the way up to multiple murders. Now this took me quite a long time to put together, but what's interesting about all the cases from this week, from the ones for children and the ones for women, is that these two people here got the most attention. Now this guy here is some sort of medical doctor, so he made it into the more mainstream national newspapers, and this guy here, well, you can probably guess why he's the only one out of them all who pretty much made it into every single mainstream newspaper. He did something very horrific and he killed his wife, but you know what, other people on this page actually did the same, but for some reason they only made it into local media. It's almost like the media has a bias, because this guy got more attention than everyone else combined. Now I did spend a long time trying to put this together. I can't say this is absolutely every single case, but I think it is. This is not people who are in court. This is not people who have been arrested. This is people who've specifically been jailed since Monday, as far as I can tell.
YT people are just as likely to commit crime as anyone else, but for some reason, it's only broadcasted and spotlighted when the person is a person of color or from some other marginalized group. And it's done to confirm your racist bias. In the wise words of Rumi and Genu,
we can't fix it if we never face it. We can't fix it if we never face it.
The same way people in South Korea don't want Chinese people coming over and they're saying we are Charlie. We've seen it in Australia recently too, where they're saying all the immigrants coming in are bad for the economy, they're bad for housing, they're bad for jobs. And of course we see it in the US. That's like our whole brand now. We're seeing it in Canada, we're seeing it in Japan, we're seeing it in the UK. And I feel like people let their hate outweigh their common sense. Like I said, CK went to Korea to tell them don't let immigrants in your country. At the same time, if these Koreans come into the US, they're gonna get rounded up and raided and forced back to Korea. We just saw it happen. Like when he says immigrants are ruining the United States, he's talking about Koreans too, yet they embrace him as a symbol and a martyr. I feel like the world is in a very sad and hypocritical, hateful loop right now, blaming all your problems and hardships on various marginalized groups of people. It's much easier to blame him than to look at yourself and say, I need to work harder, I need to grow, I need to change, I should reflect on how I live my life. It's much harder for people to be accountable for their own actions in their own lives these days. It's easier to scapegoat and says, I got fired because of you, I'm lonely because all women suck, instead of maybe I suck as a guy. And the thing that just spins my brain is like, the rich elites profit the most out of all this chaos. We're stuck blaming each other for horrible pay, lack of jobs, inflation, cost of living skyrocketing, lack of housing, healthcare becoming increasingly unattainable and unaffordable, and we're just fighting for scraps, fighting over culture wars. Woke this, woke that, immigrant this, undocumented, illegal that, like, what are we doing here? We ignore the violence of guns so politicians can get rich from the NRA paying them. We ignore the need for healthcare because Big Pharma profits in a for-profit healthcare system. Politicians are paid to keep the status quo. Until we unite and agree that it's time to change, we're stuck. It'll be a constant loop of misguided frustration and misdirected anger. If there are any Trump supporters here, usually no. Like I'm pretty sure y'all got purged from my channel last year because I was like, if you're a Trump supporter, please unfollow me. But I would love to ask a Trump supporter to realistically name one policy Trump has passed that has made your life better. Not the policy he's done to attack and dehumanize and strip rights from minorities and immigrants and marginalized groups and gay people and women. Do you earn more money now? Are your eggs cheaper? Is your rent more affordable? Can you afford that trip to the doctor? Are you less stressed? Is your life easier or better? Do you have more disposable income now? A lot of his supporters prioritize owning the Dems and punishing the illegals and the non-Christians and the non-Republicans that even very much to their own detriment they'll suffer, ride it out, and see it through to the end. So yeah, guys, I just, that's my take, I guess, on how CK's death has been received over the last few days, I guess. But yeah, I'm sure y'all will be loud in the comments and have a lot to say. I'm sure a lot of people are gonna hate me for this. I'm sure a lot of people think I'm stupid, like, and I don't know what I'm talking about, but that's just my take, that's my opinion. You're entitled to have your own. The rest of the uploads this week will be a lot better than this, a lot more cheery than this. We're getting back to our K-pop news and dating in Korea story times. This, I just had to get off my chest because it was eating me alive. So, thank you so much for watching. If you did, remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Annyeong!